Hello and welcome. Today we are speaking with Nicola O'Reilly, Senior Buyer at Target Australia, about all things buying and particularly about how the role has changed now that she can no longer travel overseas. Welcome, Nicola.
Thank you, welcome.
And I just want to say, would you like to just give us a little bit of a background about your career? You've had a fairly long, extensive career in fashion buying.
I have. Yeah, so I started off at Next and was there for 12 years in the UK, and 18 years ago moved to Australia, sponsored visa with Maya, then moved to Harris Scarfe, and for the last 3 years have been with Target in women's wear.
Okay.
And in that time, I've covered menswear, women's wear and children's wear.
Great stuff. Okay, so my first question to you today is, obviously you manage a very large product portfolio at Target. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I guess it's probably fair to say no day is really the same or completely typical. And I guess what I do is break it down into sort of 3 different things that I need to get through. Always daily, the first thing to check is the sales from the day before. One of the things that's really important in my role is to know what's working and what's not and what you can do about it. And also looking at when new styles drop into the business to see, again, how they're going to work. Since COVID, one of the things that we do on a daily basis, remotely pretty much at the moment, is have a check-in with the team. So just checking in with our immediate team just to make sure everyone's okay, what deadlines that we've got coming up and how the workload is. So if there's somebody in the team that's sort of have got a really heavy workload for whatever reason, can we help or can we sort of farm that off to someone else? Checking emails, another thing that's really important, and I guess for me, I deal predominantly with manufacturers in China, Bangladesh and India. So a lot of my emails come in overnight, and generally I try to get those answered before they start work around about lunchtime, and find if you do it at the beginning of the day, you get that over and done with. Then there's regular weekly meetings. So of those, we always have fits pretty much on a Wednesday where we get a live model come in and look at all the samples that are going before they go into production. Regular marketing meetings with our marketing team to look at the future, what's happening now, and is there anything that we need to change or update. We also have regular Zoom calls with our colleagues in the Target offices in China, Bangladesh and India. So again, a weekly check-in just to check everything's okay, and see what needs to be focused on. From an ongoing point of view, so fitting that around everything else, is competitor research. So as you mentioned, no travel overseas in the last 12, 18 months. And I guess from my point of view, I'm not sure when that will be back online, but it's really important to be aware of what's happening in the local market, and looking online and in store. Obviously, there was a time last year where we couldn't look in store, but it's important to look at both, and internationally looking at online. I'm lucky from my point of view, I understand how most of those big retailers are set up. So looking online, I can sort of imagine how it's going to look in store. Ad hoc problems. Unfortunately, in the business, there's always a problem that can come across that you have to deal with. And sometimes it's a case of drop everything and get on with whatever that problem that needs sorting. Production issues, these are things that generally would come up in the overnight emails, but it may well be not something that's a simple yes or no answer that you've got to go and talk to other people within the team. Working on colour and print approvals with the designer. I guess when we were in the office, that was something we did daily. Pretty much now we're in the office 1-2 days a week. We'll try and fit it in then. And it's really the two of us getting together, looking at what's come in. Is it what we want? Is it commercial? Do we need to change it? Et cetera, et cetera. Also at that, we're also thinking in the back of our mind is the timelines that we have to work to, because you can't forever go on trying to get a colour correct, because at some point you're going to miss the delivery deadlines and the production deadlines. And then, of course, the big part of it is planning for the next season strategically and financially. So I guess that's always thinking about what's going to be next, what's the next newest trend, which I will, learn a lot of that from my research locally and internationally, but really trying to sort of understand what's the next things that we need to be focusing on from a Target point of view. That can also change as management and leadership change within the business. There may be different priorities that we're asked to focus on, whether it's quality, price, fashionability, whatever it is. So you need to be taking that into account of whatever you're working on. So as I say, never really the same day, but yeah, keeps me busy, that's for sure.
It's a very wide scope, isn't it? With a
It is.
skill set. You need a huge skill set to be able to cope with that and
Yeah.
the ever changing and the
Yeah.
having all those balls in the air at once.
Of course, and I think that's one of the things that's really important is being adaptable and versatile. I mean, you can't, if you're the sort of person that wants to sort of sit down and work through a to-do list from top to bottom on a daily basis, that's not the type of industry it is. What makes it exciting is that those things are always changing. I guess the good thing, and one of the things I'm very lucky with my current team at Target, is it is about the team as well. So, you know, I'm not always doing those things on my own. I consult, you know, daily with my designer. And I mean, sometimes even now on calls, we can be on the call for like 3 or 4 hours at a time, the same with my planner. So where it's so important that all of us are on the same page. And I guess one of the things that's important about my role is making sure that all of us are on the same page at the same time, and then communicating that to management. And as I say, things can change. You know, there can be a different focus. And the Target business has changed quite a lot in the last 6 months with re-strategizing and making it a smaller business, with about 120, 130 stores moving over to Kmart stores. And I guess that for us has meant we've had to look at the business differently. So many of those things you're starting to look at how you're doing going forward. And although going forward may well be the next planning season, as a good buyer, you really want to make sure you can affect those things as early as possible. So if there's changes I can bring in earlier by talking to the factories, working with the designer, then obviously we'll try and do that. So yeah, so it keeps you busy.
So, because it obviously leads me on to my next question, which is, can you explain really to us what the difference is between being a buyer of private label or house brand range and from buying from branded ranges? Because you've done both, haven't you?
I have done both. I've spent most of my career doing private label. I guess really for me, that's sort of the big difference is, as a buyer of private label, you're really setting the strategy in line with the top line business strategy of whatever brand that you're working for. So obviously in that case, it's with Target, and you plan the range from concept to in store. So that encompasses working with design, fabric, color, print selection, costing, placement with the factory, the fits, and any issues that arise along the way. So it may well be, which has happened, although can sound a bit dramatic, a factory burns down in China. So what are you going to do? So you've got to work at how you solve that problem. And when, as a private label buyer, it's kind of your problem the whole way from start to finish. Whereas I guess I see with a branded buyer, you're selecting product from somebody else's brand, and generally that's a strategy and a range that's put together by someone else. So you're working within their strategy. Obviously, you feel it aligns with your business to be buying that brand, and color and print direction is generally done by the brand as opposed to yourself. And it may well be that you might, I don't know, like a t-shirt and say, well, I'd rather have that in pink than blue, but within their brand strategy they want it pink, so you're pretty tied. Whereas as a private label buyer, you can make those calls, again making sure it's right for your customer. And I guess as well, with branded product, you basically are selecting the range at the beginning. You'll agree a delivery date and prices, and then it's delivered maybe 4 or 5 months down the line. So all of those problems you may get in the between, like the color approvals or the fits, is the brand's responsibility rather than the buyer's. And I guess in my experience as well, I've found generally as a branded buyer, you've got more brands that you're responsible for, a much wider remit, rather than a private label tends to be smaller. Within the Target business, obviously it's all Target branded, but in somewhere like Myer, they may be 2 or 3 house labels that you're looking after, but the brand buyer could have 15 or 20, for instance.
So it's there's quite a shift in emphasis really from what's probably more of a financial management to something that's a product development and financial management.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I guess the financial management has become more important with a private label buyer than what it was possibly when I first started many years ago. And I guess it's important that you have both skill sets, but as a range buyer, you probably don't need that creative side to be as strong in that creative side as you do with private label. I mean, I'm very lucky at Target that within the structure there, they focus very heavily on having a design team, but in my last role at Harris Scarfe, I had no designer, and in smaller businesses, that's quite often the way it works, because obviously it all adds to your cost adding those people. So within that role, I was very much reliant on my own design skill set, I have to say I prefer having a designer because, you know, it's good to be able to talk things through and they can create much prettier visuals than I ever could. But I guess I'm very lucky I've had the experience of both. And depending on the size and the type of the business, as a buyer stroke product developer, you may have, you know, different roles that will require different skill sets. Yeah.